Who are you?
My name is Sean Carolyn, and I work at Menlo Ventures. Been here 10 years. Was formerly an engineer, and now focus almost entirely on consumer digital media and mobile investments. Siri was one of my claim to fame, very first investor there.
Yeah.
Now on the boards of Roku, Yumi, Playphone, InView, a bunch of companies of that sort.
Very cool. And this is October, what, 25th?
Fifth.
25th. Windows 8 came out today. So we 2012, right? So if you're watching this in 2014, you know you're 2 years late. So we got to think about that now because the YouTube keeps it around, right?
That's it.
And who are you?
So I'm Mark Siegel. I'm a managing director here at Menlo Ventures. I've been here for 16 years, and I invest mostly in infrastructure companies. So 3PAR was one of my most successful investments of the last couple of years. I'm on the board of a company called Tintree. I've also done a lot of our ad tech investing. So I'm on the boards of companies like NVIDIA doing targeted television advertising, Media6, Exalate. And
These are companies I haven't spent much time at all in, so you can really tell how you need to specialize in this industry.
Yeah, and certainly our industry's gotten a little more specialized in terms of people having to have domain expertise in various areas.
Yeah. So today Windows 8 came out, and Apple announced decent profits, but missed a little bit. What's happening in your world? What are you guys noticing as trends? You know, because this is where entrepreneurs from around the world come and pitch you, right? In one of these rooms, you have a ton of these rooms. So.
Yeah. Well, there are 5 big trends we're investing behind today, and those are mobile, social, of course, big data, cloud, and ad tech, and so those are kind of 5 very big trends. Now, within each one of those, there are different ways we're playing those, and there are various subsegments, but broadly, that's kind of...
I'm writing a book on context, and my 5 trends are pretty much that. Wearable computer sensors that keep going up, big data, weird data. I call it weird data because it's not just big data anymore. I'm seeing new databases that are doing all sorts of different non-MySQL kind of things, right? And it is big data, but it's a new database. Seems like it springs up every week lately. You know, it's pretty crazy. Mapping, which we saw with Apple and Google going at it, which seems boring, but a lot of the new stuff is built on top of the map or on top of the understanding of the world where we are. And maturing social networks, right? We have Facebook now, so now we can build something like a highlight on top of Facebook. And we're seeing lots of apps.
Yeah, and clearly we look at social now as an infrastructure layer, and of course there's a lot of interesting applications being built on top of it. And so one example would be Fab.com, which is an e-commerce company it's probably our fastest growing company ever. And it is really kind of a social commerce platform. So that's just one example, but social in the enterprise, I think is interesting. A whole variety of things you said. I mean, location-based commerce as well, and Sean is on the board of a company called Telenav that started with turn-by-turn directions, but is expanding now into lots of other location-based offerings. So there's a variety of sub-themes, in the big data area. The way storage, to me personally, is a great way of making picks and shovels kind of investments that.
At Morgan Thaler's party the other night, I saw a company, I think it's called Skyera. They make a new flash-based pizza box, basically. It's a 1U or a half-U rack-mounted piece of equipment. Can be carried on a carry-on luggage in a plane. I think with compression, it's like a 1/4 petabyte of memory.
Yeah, it
replaces 3,000 hard drives, right?
It's amazing, yeah. Well, I was an investor in a company called Pliant Technology that was building really high availability and high performance SSDs for enterprise applications. And I kind of tell the story that I had asked the CTO at one of our other storage companies whether Flash was ever going to be an enterprise storage technology, and this was back in, that was probably 2007.
Yep.
And he said, no way, never going to hit the price points, it'll never be reliable enough. I asked him the same question 18 months later, which was, we were doing due diligence on Pliant, and the response was, we may see a time pretty soon where there's no more spinning media. And of course, I think that's going to be a long time before Flash gets down to that cost, but I think it is a totally viable enterprise class form of media, and obviously for anything that requires high performance. And so we've got, this company Tintree is a mixed media storage appliance that's directed toward virtualized applications specifically. But I think every one of our other storage companies, Coraid, Nexenta, they all have a solid state tier in the physical storage. So it is just becoming it's becoming ubiquitous as part of the infrastructure.
It's exciting for us at Rackspace because that means we can offer new
Exactly.
cloud computing capabilities with our OpenStack technologies. What are you seeing happen in the world that might be different
Mark
from what
alluded to
he's
some of them. I do think in mobile there's some really exciting stuff going on, and you talked about mapping. I mean, Maps is just a very basic data set that enables a new set of applications, but these databases that exist on top of the maps allow markets to be made. I think that's what Uber is, another one.
Yep.
I don't know if they're growing as fast as Fab, but pretty
Close.
close. They're,
I
mean, just exploding. And you say, well, why is that possible? Town cars as an industry has been around, for as long as cars have, people getting picked up. But it's the phone being able to make a market between supply and demand, because all you do is hit a button and GPS fingerprint goes up to the sky. You say, oh, there's an ETA of the car 2 minutes away. Get picked up. Your credit card's on file. So you create these magical experiences because of the context of where you are. And imagine instead having to type in addresses and then the driver having to type in where he is. There's just too much friction without that. So that's one. Telenav is a public company board that I'm on. We're invested in. They just bought a company called ThinkNear, which is very specifically focused at location-based advertising. They can bid on exchanges, so any mobile app, any mobile website, and they get down to, I think it's 100 by 100 meter block. So they can say, hey, everybody at the Giants game, I want to advertise hats and number one fingers and hot dogs, and depending on the weather, they can change. And so all of a sudden, the people who are on their phones at the game just see exactly something that they would see on a sign, but now virtually.
Yeah.
And
this is going to be a big deal. Edmunds.com is
huge.
already using this to target you with very specific ads if you're searching from a car dealership.
Yes.
Because they know if you're searching from a car dealership, you're buying a car.
Yeah, many of those customers. I mean, basically anything that you might look up, and Telenav has this thing that's called CPD, cost per drive, whereby, let's say I search for Walmart and I get served a Target ad. Hey, there's a Target that's only 2 miles away.
Yeah.
Click to drive. It follows you into the parking lot, and now Target's like, well, they landed. Maybe you don't have a cash register receipt, but the fact that they parked there and stayed there for half an hour is fairly indicative that was somebody who spent some money with you. So you kind of like you did with Google, where maybe the click you don't have on the shopping cart, but for every 10 clicks I get one customer. They can do the same thing. It's a really high CPM type of ad unit.
Yeah.
All because of the context.
I don't know where to take it with you guys, because you guys see so many companies. How many companies a year? We were sort of talking before the camera came on that how many companies a day you can see, 2 to 9 on a bad day, right?
Well, well, you better have a good presentation if you're number 9. No, I would say, how many would you say come in a week? I mean, I would say it's probably on the order into the firm of 100, deals a week. I'd say, 5,000 a year. I mean, we're looking to fund 8 to 10 companies a year out of our main fund. Now we'll do probably 20 seed investments. But
so you guys say
it's a
no.
very small percentage.
You guys say no a lot. I did another interview with Jennifer Jones where I called the VC Mr. No because he had a lot of ways to say no.
Well, we say no. We try to meet with companies obviously that fall into these thematic categories, and certainly try to be helpful in every meeting that we have. But I think the reality is that a big part of it is just finding something where the entrepreneur's vision is a fit, obviously for the vision that we have and the investment thesis we have. So.
Yeah. You guys are in Roku. What do you think is going to happen with TV? Because it seems like it's changed. My life with TV is changing.
That is. I mean, Mark talked about the cloud and the data ad tech. They kind of converge with this next gen TV over the internet. So all of a sudden, all of the infrastructure, the coaxial cable that was laid to every house, the satellites that are up in the sky, those as the only way to distribute high quality video into the home is not the case anymore.
Yep.
You can get basically anything HD on demand. Roku has 3 million customers that watch 12 hours a week, 600 channels, and there's a new channel that shows up every day. And so you talk about, well, when cable had all these fringe cable channels, more viewers spent more time. Now you can have a channel for everything.
Yep.
You should have your own Roku channel.
I'm pretty sure I do.
And then there's this thing of the media, the advertising, right?
Yeah.
Now I know exactly who you are, what you watch. Not in a bad way, but instead of showing me, I don't know, diaper ads or something when I don't have a baby anymore, it shows me car ads because I was on Edmunds or something like that. And so we have got another company called Yumi that does that across all 4 screens. So while you're on TV, it shows you, big high quality video ads. When you're on your phone, little ones. When you're on your tablet, middle ones. And then of course surfing the web. And they're just taking off to going to cross $100 million this year. So sizable business now.
Is it too early to pitch a company meant just for these new Google wearable computers, the Project Glass, or which are supposedly going to ship sometime in 2013, but might slip and ship in 2014? Is that too early for you guys, or do you guys like to see it that
Here's
early?
what you don't want to count on is if the only place to make any money and build any intellectual property is once the glasses start to ship, that's a ways off. However, you start to think of, there's a lot of apps that very clearly can find some market in mobile, and then the market will explode when you get to the glasses because you're just interacting with it 24/7 instead of interacting with it just when you open up your phone. So something like a Siri, right?
Yeah.
You could just see the utility of that multiplying.
This is why I got
Glasses.
excited by this app called Light, Lighttt, because it seemed like when the glasses come out, I'm going to be taking pictures all day long, just maybe even automatically once every 30 seconds or something like that.
Yep.
There's a guy in Palo Alto who's already wearing a GoPro camera, right? And that's exactly
Right.
what he does. He
All
takes
time.
an image every 30 seconds. He goes, "This is cool for my life. I get to go home and see everything I did, and it reminds me what I did, and now I can go back and..."
That's right. Fill up one of those pizza boxes with just your high-def video stream
Yeah.
of life. There's some enterprise companies, too, that are taking advantage of this. We have one called DriveCam that it sits and it's always recording out the front window of a car. And as soon as it senses a G-Shock, it takes like the last minute and then the next minute and uploads that to the cloud. And so basically liability is fully attributable now. So the insurance bills of some of these companies goes down dramatically. There's a lot less lawsuits. You know who was at fault. So
Wow.
That's
Does that
San Francisco buses have those now. All like Vegas taxis have those now. There's some big waste management companies that have rolled these out to their fleets.
I wonder as a consumer when I'm going to get encouraged to buy one, to have one of those in my car. By my
You can on your insurance bill, but
Yeah.
whether you want that.
That's what I'm mentally going, I bet I could save some money on my insurance, but I bet it would cost me if I ever did something stupid. What are you, in infrastructure, how do you guys get along? Because you're in the same space I like to be, which is consumer electronics or consumer services and infrastructure and power, do you guys...
Well, they've made a lot of money for the firms.
Oh, see? There we go.
I'll let him describe some details, but it's been a great business.
Well, I think we have a very purposeful plan to have about half of our investments be enterprise investments and half be consumer. And right now, in fact, is this incredible period of time where we actually have all this. I mean, you know from Rackspace, we have incredible innovation going on the infrastructure, kind of enterprise technologies, the cloud, big data, and there's all this innovation going on in consumer. And so we obviously want to have the team develop domain expertise in different areas. And so we do all make decisions together, but we have people that concentrate on different areas. And so while Sean concentrates on mobile and some of the other consumer areas, and I do mostly enterprise, we obviously defer to one another in terms of where our expertise lies. But it helped. I think we've really been doing great, and I think have great investments on both sides. And of course, what you have to rely on is your partners that have really done the research, and I think we try to be very, very research focused in terms of developing this domain expertise. You have to trust that the other people on your team are doing their work and are making good investment decisions.
Today, Marissa Meyer bought Stamped, right? And starting to get into mobile. Do you watch the big companies as an exit, potential exit, and does that inform what things you invest in?
Well, absolutely. I mean, I think we know, I'd say philosophically, we want to believe that every company we invest in can be a profitable, enduring company. And certainly when I think about the biggest returns, if I think about all the success we've had, in the last few years, probably our biggest winners have been the companies, the 3PARs, Caviums, Acme Packets that have gone public. But it really helps when there's a robust M&A environment, and certainly we see that right now. These public companies have tons and tons of cash on their balance sheet. They're looking to expand and grow inorganically. And what we know is that even when we invest in these companies that we believe can be enduring, profitable companies, that there are going to be big companies that come after them and want to acquire them. And so, and that's what a good board does at any given point in time. You look at a potential suitor you have and an offer that's on the table, and you decide whether the offer is good enough to outweigh the risks of running the company as a standalone business moving forward. But we certainly look at the white space, if you will, that in these public companies' product lines, and look at their acquisition activity to think about, hey, who are the natural acquirers out there? What are the alternatives to being a public company if that doesn't materialize for whatever set of reasons? So it does inform it, but I'd say companies that get built specifically because you think that they're a good acquisition opportunity for another company, that ends up being a self-fulfilling prophecy. And that is usually not the best way to create shareholder value, because you will usually sub-optimize on investments you need to make to have the alternative of remaining independent.
That said, I mean, we've been on a roll in the last year. I think 4 deals: Q1 Labs, Pixable, AeroScout, and what was the last?
Pixable, AeroScout, SocialCast, Client,
PowerView. Sorry,
PowerView.
Bizarre Voice. So all 4 of those were M&A activity. I mean, Q1 Labs was the furthest along, got bought by IBM. I mean, that could have been a public company pretty soon thereafter, but these guys have a lot of money and are starting to spend it, so we're not afraid to sell it if it looks like it's the right choice at the time.
What else do I could talk to you guys for years, because you see so many things. Tell me some tips. Entrepreneurs come in this room, and what happens? Tell me about a meeting. What happens if I'm starting a company? How many people are in the room, and what should I expect? How much time should I expect in my first meeting?
Okay, so it depends, right? Like if there's some sectors where you have been just looking at everything, and when a company comes in, it's because you sought them out, and you're digging in, for an hour, full hour, and maybe you got a couple partners in if it's a space you're really excited about. And we do a lot of our investing is thematic that way. There's other times where it's just, hey, Robert said this guy's really smart, you should meet with him, and they come in, and if it's a high quality introduction, sometimes you spend an hour and then follow up meetings, and if the person kind of meanders on, doesn't have a good value proposition, you might thank them very much. But generally, people are working really hard, really excited about their ideas, and they wouldn't be devoting their life to it if it wasn't for a reason. And so I'd say most meetings are good. Most websites you hit are not good, so it all depends.
Yep, no, it's true. I'm with the 1,600 startups on this Facebook list. I can see some are really good at explaining who they are.
Yeah.
And having a cadence of features and a cadence of media and a cadence of explaining, what their proposition is. And some don't even explain, on the page when you go there, that don't even tell you what the company does, right?
Yeah. And I mean, the only thing I would add to that is, I think most venture firms can actually make pretty quick decisions, including us. So typically you have an initial meeting.
Yeah.
If we decide it's something we want to pursue, we'll really dig in and try and understand the product, talk to customers if it's a company that's at the stage that they have customers. And there's probably a meeting at the company's location, maybe a subsequent meeting.
And that's what you call due diligence?
Yeah, well, the due diligence process is meeting with people at the company. It's doing references on the management team. It's doing references with customers. Potentially some other kind of technical, we might bring in an expert, for instance, to help us assess the technology, depending on the type of company it is. But it's very rare that it's a company in a market that we have not done any research on, know nothing about. So we're usually not coming up to speed from zero. And so it's a few week long process. And again, depends on the size of the investment as well. But for a typical kind of Series A investment that might be $5 million, it's a few week long process. It's a few meetings, which would culminate in kind of a meeting with the whole partnership here.
What mistakes do you find people make?
Here, I was just going to give this advice, and I think it dovetails nicely into the question. So, this lean startup trend, I think, is here to stay.
Yep.
And I was on the board of InView with Steve Blank and Eric Rees, and it was kind of born there. And I'd say what the mistake is not being able to, if you're in the market, not being able to explain your own metrics well, because especially in the consumer markets, by definition, you're walking into a VC, they're not in the target market. In fact, the people around the table in your company are not in the target market. So really having these end customer anecdotes of exactly how are they using the product, exactly what is the value proposition, how are you changing their life,
how many minutes are they spending with your
and how
mobile app
how do you
whatever.
Characterize that this is really providing value and they're sticking around. So fortunately, there's a lot of nice tools in the market right now where if you just use these tools and plug it in, you can come with some canned reports. But I think the best companies are able to explain those at a very deep level. It's not these vanity metrics. It's cohort analysis of, hey, 40% of my user base is retained and comes back every day. Here's what they're doing. And they gain these insights into how do they drive the roadmap that I just don't think you can gain in any way, because you're always trying to guess, what's next, what is the latent need that the customer has that they can't express to you yet. And if you can see that and then deliver to it, you can build amazing stuff.
Some measure, and then the CEO of Sosta said the new metrics isn't business intelligence, it's contextual intelligence, right? And being able to explain the number and understand why the number is there. Or
and how it's changing over time. The trends are really
Oh, you guys
critical.
love trend charts that always look like this, right? I know, because every Paul Graham at Y Combinator teaches his startups to always put a chart that has something that looks like this,
So that's an important one. It has to be a metric that matters. There are a lot of vanity metrics that don't, especially if you had a TechCrunch piece or you highlight somebody. Whoa, look at it, it's going all crazy.
Yeah.
But
those numbers, by the way, that matters less and less.
Yeah.
It used to matter more 5 years ago when there wasn't an Apple store or a Microsoft store or a Google store. That getting featured in one of those stores actually helps your numbers a lot more than a TechCrunch article does, right?
It is a new
TechCrunch will cause a nice spike, but getting featured causes a...
If you're top 25.
Yeah, like Circa today was featured in the Apple Store, and they were celebrating on Facebook, right? Again, why do I watch Facebook? Because I can see, one, the celebratory behavior of entrepreneurs, and also how many likes do they get on things, Are there numbers? That's a signal to me that I should take something more seriously, right?
That's interesting.
Yeah. What kind of signals are you guys watching to make sure that you don't miss something, or do you have your own metrics that you're watching on companies?
We do. We've actually spent a lot of time internally looking at both inside the portfolio and of the companies we evaluate. What are those things that are indicative of success, and how do you not get fooled by them? Because there's all these snapshots in time. Eric talks about this thing called innovation accounting, where you're actually looking for it's not just, let's say, cost per acquisition over lifetime value, but it's how is that trend over time? What are some of the features that people are implementing, and how well are they able to predict what's happening? So all of the to your point, all these lists, the Twitter list, the Facebook lists, all the blogs. I mean, there's no shortage of media to consume, but honestly, a lot of the the best, highest quality stuff comes from other people that you know and respect. You know, you have opinion of somebody smart who's looked at 10,000 companies, or another venture capitalist who you know you're had a good relationship with over the years, and they're only going to show you their highest quality stuff. The human filter is still very powerful.
Yeah, the network of Sand Hill Road is very strong.
Yeah.
Talking about the network, a lot of the venture capital firms are having the offsites right now. You know, I know DFJ is doing one in a couple of weeks, and I'm sure you guys do.
Mm-hmm.
What happens at those offsites, and do you guys come out with the next 18 months of themes that you're going to focus on? Is that sort of what happens, or is it just playing golf with a lot of cool people?
No, actually, so you know, there's no golf at our office. Actually, our CEO meeting we used to, and so few people played golf, we eliminated the golf tournament.
I just do that because DFJ is at the Ritz where I live. It's on a golf course.
So we do a variety of different kind of events. So we get together as a partnership every 6 months, which is our sort of thinking about investment themes, new areas, deciding who in the firm is going to become the domain expert in a certain area. And what we think we're doing right and wrong. Are there systematic mistakes that we're making in evaluating particular types of companies? In fact, Sean mentioned all these KPIs we track. I mean, we had a big discussion at the last one about, are we tracking all the right KPIs? Have the metrics we use to decide that somebody's really successful the right metrics to use? And should those numbers be the same as they were a year ago? So we have those kinds of conversations. We do an offsite with our CEOs that's a little bit more of a general business orientation. And to be honest, it's a time that the CEOs can network together. I think that can be a super lonely job, being a company founder or a CEO. And it's probably more often than that. It's nice to have a time to be able to discuss things in confidence, with your peer group. We do
That's
other
why
types
I always
of,
try to sneak in.
right. Well, actually this year was the first time we opened part of that to the outside. But we do other kinds of events with other executives, VPs of marketing, sales, engineering in our companies. And again, it's partly to try and have some of the things people learn in one part of the portfolio transfer to other companies, so people don't have to repeat the same mistakes twice. And again, these industries and these companies, these are such dynamic situations. You're literally we're creating new kinds of markets and businesses, and so nobody's written the book on all this stuff yet, and so I think it's really important if these companies can kind of accelerate their learning.
We talked before the camera came on how the venture world has changed in the 16 years you've been here.
Yeah.
You used to be able to see everything that moved in the industry, whether you funded it or not. Now that's pretty impossible.
Yeah. Well, obviously today you have much more transparency of information, which is a good thing. You can access that information, but just the sheer number of companies out there is
and they're springing up in weird places,
Yeah,
Brazil and
lots of other parts of the world.
And,
Silicon Valley has no monopoly on innovation anymore, and so I think there are interesting entrepreneurial models elsewhere in the world. It's become so capital efficient to start a company, particularly a consumer company.
Yeah.
But even on the enterprise, I think that's true too. And so
certainly if you have a Yammer style model where you spread virally and you don't have a sales team that needs to go in the front door.
Yeah, and but even when that happens, you even when you do need a sales effort, you can acquire people now. I mean,
like Workday, right?
Workday, and 10 years ago there was, email marketing was in its infancy. There was no display advertising. There was no search engine marketing. So the cost of acquiring customers, I think, has come down by easily an order of magnitude. Of course, from Rackspace or Amazon, you rent the infrastructure now.
Yep.
So many of these costs have come down that companies can just get started a lot more easily. We still think that venture capital firms like ourselves supply a lot of expertise in addition to the money that when a company really needs to scale provides a lot of value. But initial seed funding can come a lot of places, and we do try to wrap also value around that with these our talent fund and entrepreneurs being able to.
Has AngelList changed the venture business at your level yet, or has it just changed it at the angel level?
I think more at the angel level, and I
Yeah.
think we view ourselves as coming in kind of one stage, beyond that. But it has made it really much more challenging, I think, to keep up with all the interesting things that are going on. So,
No.
one of the challenges.
Give me a pitch for the entrepreneurs. Why choose Menlo Ventures? Why not go across the street to USVP or Andreessen's right here? You guys are all like within 200 yards of each
Yeah.
other. So I can walk around and go, hey, who should I go and pitch today?
And one big change, I think, in the business that's happened is I think that a decade or two ago, it wouldn't be uncommon to have maybe 10 venture firms invested in a company by the time it went public. So there clearly, as funds have grown, and I think as capital has become more concentrated in the top funds, there's a lot less room for. We still see 2 or 3 funds, but for that kind of collaboration. But look, there's a few things that we really think we do well, and we alluded to one with the research focus. But we really think in the areas that we are targeting to invest in, we really feel like our domain expertise is second to none. And so I think that if entrepreneurs are looking for value-added board members, which presumably they are, because otherwise, venture financing is a very expensive way to finance your company if you're not getting any value add. So, so we think we bring a lot of domain expertise. We've actually done a study interviewing entrepreneurs and founders about our activity as board members, and so what we hear consistently, secondarily, is or not secondarily, but my second point is that we're the most active board members they have, and so I think there are a lot of firms that talk about that, but you find out that people are on 15, 20 boards. We really try and keep our boards down to 5, 6, maybe 7 at the most, so that we can be the most active board member, really working as a partner. And I think it's important when entrepreneurs look for funding that they pick somebody who's going to be a partner and is going to be patient and really help as an advisor and be with the business for a long time. And our third thing is something that we call Venture Right, which is sort of a way of treating people and interacting with them. And it's about empathy and respect and being good people to work with, and that's something that
no yelling and screaming.
No yelling and screaming. We consider ourselves very even keeled and very pragmatic. And again, when you get, just like we had talked about, when you come to a situation where there's an offer for the company to be sold, and people around the board table may look at the very same data and arrive at very different conclusions about
That happened with
what
Siri,
the risk
right?
is in the future. Sure.
That happened with Siri, right? I know you guys didn't want to sell, and the entrepreneur goes, "I'd like to take some money off my table. Thank you very much."
Yeah.
Right.
So you can have a situation where people perceive the future risks as different, perceive the value of the offer that's on the table as being different, and are you working with? There's no empirical right or wrong in these situations. So, are you in the boat with people who, are going to be pragmatic, are going to be reasonable, are going to compromise? I mean, that's all part of this, and you obviously can go out there easily and find. Information from people, entrepreneurs that have had great experiences and entrepreneurs that have lousy experiences, and I'm proud to say I think most of ours have been great experiences.
I get pitched by a lot of people, some of whom are really like the Tiger Woods of entrepreneurs, the Mark Zuckerberg style entrepreneurs. People who Ron Conway says you can smell them coming because they're just so good. But I get pitched by a lot of people who don't yet have a team or say they have a brilliant idea, but they haven't built it yet. And it's like, and they want me to introduce them to people like you. And I'm like, no, it doesn't work. What's the sort of the standard? You guys look at team, right?
Yep.
You look at market size. How is this going to be a swing for the fence, or is it going to be a double?
Yep.
Right. Tell me a little bit about what goes through your head when you meet an entrepreneur.
So look, I think it's market, team, and product, and I wouldn't necessarily say it's always ordered that way, but there has to be a big market. Sometimes you don't know how big the market is. You look at some of the new consumer things, and it can be hard to tell. But if you're not in a big market, it doesn't matter how good your product is. It doesn't really matter how good your team is. You're going to be limited. Yeah. Team is hugely important, and most companies do not fail because the technology doesn't work. Most companies, at least that we back, if we've done our homework, we're very rarely wrong about the market. They fail because of execution, and that's all team-based. Now, I think one of the most important value adds that a venture firm brings to a company is helping them recruit the right team.
Or fire. I was in a startup that sort of shot itself in the head because the CEO couldn't fire people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, yeah,
really important skill to have in a startup.
You need the right.
It's not a fun one. It's not a fun one.
No.
And being an entrepreneur means not always having fun. That's why I don't start startups. I like doing this. This is a lot of fun. I don't have to worry about getting fired tomorrow. Usually.
No, you need the right. You need to constantly be asking as an entrepreneur, do I have the very best people in the right positions for them? And sometimes it means moving somebody to a position where they really can be the best contributor. But that's one of the things we think we really bring to the table is actually helping people recruit that best team. And so we are perfectly willing to talk to somebody when it's just one person and an idea. I don't think that's too early for us to talk. And the reason we created the Menlo Talent Fund, which is our seed vehicle, is so that when we find that extraordinary founder who more often than not is a young technologist who has a great idea, certainly doesn't have the team around them yet, maybe doesn't even quite know how to build it into a great business enterprise, but you sort of see that spark, we're risking very little capital. And again, what we try and provide is some mentorship around that so that we can help them flesh that out, build that into a real business. And so we're happy to see things that early. And, we have this vehicle for
that's really why Silicon
funding.
Valley is still a force in the world, isn't it? You're right across the street from Stanford, so you have this constant flow of really smart people coming out every year, and a lot of them have ideas. But it's the business. Mark Zuckerberg put it that way. He said, "Why did I move Facebook here from Boston? There was business infrastructure here. There was lawyers. There was mentors. There was people I could go to dinner with and understand how to build my company." Right?
And there still is I think, really something culturally here that's different from other places in the country. And we do invest all over the U.S. and we've had great companies in the Seattle area and Austin and Boston area, of course. But I do think culturally there is still something here where it's more acceptable to try and fail. There's much sort of freer flow of ideas that I think in a lot of, certainly other parts of the world, but I think even other parts of the country would really be considered probably, crossing the line of what's acceptable in terms of people hopping jobs and so forth. But, it's one of the things, and it's not because I think clearly people have to be ethical about what they do, but people jump jobs here much more frequently, and it does help.
There's a lot more opportunity. I lived in Seattle and worked at Microsoft, and that's a company town, right?
Right.
There's Microsoft. In one side of the valley, there's Amazon and Starbucks and Boeing and PACCAR, and then there's a bunch of little video game companies, and there's not much else. It's not like the Valley where there's 1,000 different companies to work for and all sorts of different things that people right across the street.
Right. And that's what helps these ideas, permeate, and it creates fierce competition. But
there's
it also makes everybody better, I think.
Yeah. Well, there's also an information sharing. You guys have seen this. There's a user group network here. There's a college network. I speak at Stanford all the time to entrepreneurial clubs. Where people get together and talk about the same things we've been talking about today, right? And that helps everybody. You're right. Yeah. Anyway, so where else? Anything else that we should talk about, or anything else that you're seeing happen in the world that's different than 6 months ago? Or
boy, we've covered a lot of ground.
We did. I just want to give you a last chance. Tell me about anything that's cool.
What do you want to talk about, Sean?
Yeah, we already hit mobile, social. What else?
Here's a question. I see companies lately. I see a group of companies that are doing something cool, but aren't doing it on mobile first, and I almost always write them off. And I haven't yet been proven wrong by that. I think they're making a wrong bet, and where they usually get hung up, and this gets into maybe a philosophy of. They talked about this at startup school. Is philosophy is really important. What philosophy did you pick as an entrepreneur? Did you pick that the world is going mobile and that's where you should put all your eggs, or did you pick a philosophy of, oh, there's a billion people with Windows PCs? But when I sit next to a guy with a Windows PC, I ask him, or a girl, show me something new you've loaded in the past month.
Yeah.
I've asked this question dozens of times, and I never get something new.
But they do have a browser on that PC.
Yeah, but they still don't try. They're not. There's not a lot of new behavior there. There's not a.
Well, it's just been around for a long time, right? I mean, the App Store is a couple years old, and so you just.
But you sit next to somebody with an iPad or an Android tablet, and you ask them what's new.
Yeah.
And they have a detailed, long answer. Oh, I have this app that's a cool game, and I have this app that's cool for traffic, and I have this app that's cool for this. In other words, there's a hunger for new things on these newer platforms. Yeah. So getting adoption is easier. It's cheaper on these. That's my philosophy.
Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No.
You wrote an article actually about how people on iOS devices are, even though Android has all these devices out there, people on iOS devices are spending more money, downloading more apps, and so it's a little bit of a.
So here,
Android is more
maybe
open,
a cultural
right?
phenomenon,
and that's a trend I'm watching too. Is the contextual apps are coming on strong.
I would say I've seen that, like both in the like access to the address book and some of this ambient information, location and calendar and things like that. I mean, I see why Apple did it, right? They wanted to provide a very well curated experience and users not to be able to step in a pile of stuff. But in terms of a fertile bed to test things, and on Android, you download something and all of a sudden you get full access to the operating system. I mean, it could be used for bad things, but it also can be used for some very innovative stuff. So we're actually seeing several companies now go Android first.
Yep.
For like kind of the test bed, and then get their iOS stuff ready.
Windows 8 came out today. How do you think that's going to change the world? Are you?
I don't.
You don't think it's going to change the world? Because I sort of feel that way too. That Windows Phone ended up with what 3%, 3.5% market share.
Here's what I think is interesting about Microsoft and Windows is they really do have a unique product in the living room. And they're working on Connect with the Xbox and the service. I mean, gamers really love it, and they are the king. And then Xbox Connect, which really is the first input device that gets your whole body, your limbs moving, jumping around. And you see kids in front of this thing, and it's pretty cool. Like they really get into it, and I think kind of like a touch screen. When you are interacting with any compute device in a more natural way. Possibilities open. So I think there's a lot of potential there. What I think Microsoft has not been very good at in the past is really designing these incredible experiences around the capability. And so I think of like right now with the Kinect, you hold your hand up over a button to push it instead of like that, or to swipe a screen, it's like hold your hand up over the next key. And at some point in time, I mean, I'm envisioning your AV room isn't a big screen TV, it's the wall.
Yeah.
And the sensor you're looking at is not a little webcam. It's, several of these things embedded, and you're essentially on a holodeck. And I think there's actually a lot of pretty cool app potential in that arena. InView is another company, I've been on the board of for a while, and I look at where they're going now, where for the first time, I think you have avatars that are of a high enough fidelity with enough customization where you really get nonverbal communication. I mean, you just couldn't
this is
get
an
that
example
type
of
thing.
Technology continues change. The guys who make the Kinect sensor in Israel, that's PrimeSense, right?
PrimeSense, yeah.
And they just today announced or are starting to show off the next generation of prime sense sensors, which are a lot sharper. You can see fingers,
Right, yeah.
you know, right? So you can do some
Yeah.
more of that use cases that
That's
you
true.
talked
It
about.
was a
yeah.
pretty gross recognition of movement.
And we're seeing that in a lot of areas. That's why I could talk to you guys for hours, right? I rode some electronic skateboards yesterday with
Yep.
these little brushless motors that are a horsepower
Yeah.
motor, and you can go for 6 miles
Yeah.
on a battery charge. And you could think of all sorts of companies you would build with those kinds of motors, you know, from mountain bikes to baby buggies, even, you know? I mean, assisted baby buggies, assisted wheelchairs, new kinds of things, right? All sorts of fun
I
stuff.
think there's a lot
Robotics.
of potential in, like, the four-copters that you basically can arbitrarily control flying around a room. Obviously, those have wireless networking, video, surveillance. I mean, there's a lot of just kind of cool apps you could do with that type of thing, but also a lot of new markets that you think could unfold. I mean, the security market, for example. I mean, do you really need somebody running around when a robotic copter can roam the halls, dock for charging, and another one can take over a shift?
To get back to Windows 8, you're taking a wait and see attitude with your companies, or are you advising
I
them
think
to
it
go
actually,
aggressive?
I think it'll get up to, in the above double digits, so 10-15% market share over time. I mean, Nokia still ships a lot of phones, and those two are very well entrenched relationship right now. So I don't think, you look at these small companies and you have 3 coders, you're not going to choose Windows 8 unless you're getting paid by Microsoft to do it. But I think something where...
And even there, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs who turn down the money because they say, hey, I'm playing for Instagram style.
That's
you know,
right, yeah.
If Instagram did a Windows 8 thing or a Windows Phone thing first, and then went to iPhone, they would never have been Instagram,
Yeah.
right? They would have lost $1 billion of value, right?
Yeah.
And most kids are smart, and they go, hey, Kevin had something going there. That's what I'm going to do too. I'm going to go after the big dogs
somewhere.
Yeah.
And then you can always, hire more people to scale to the other platforms. But, you pick one place to focus, create a great user experience, and then go from there.
Yeah.
It is interesting how fast fortunes change, isn't it? When you
Yeah.
look at, Nokia and Microsoft.
Well, the problem with Windows 8 too is it's different things, right? There still is it's still a desktop laptop
Yeah.
system. That's Windows 8 Pro. Then there's the tablet, and they confuse the marketplace because Windows RT doesn't even run old Windows apps, and it's $500, and that's competing with the iPad.
Yep.
Then you go up that stack, right, and you get into the Windows 8 Pro, which runs old Windows apps, but is $900 and higher pricing, and they've thrown a lot out today for people to.
I'm
swallow.
not as up to date on all the pricing of the various
Yeah.
things as you are.
Well, I mean, the hot area where we get excited is the $200 tablets.
yeah.
The Nexus 7s, and now the
Mini.
iPad Mini, which
Yeah,
is
Kindle Fire,
$329,
yeah.
$329, and the Kindle Fire, which is $200. That's
And Roku's $50.
and
So it's cheap as it gets.
and so that's where the heat of the consumer market is, and we were wondering how is the enterprise going to react
Yeah.
to this new UI? Because I worked at Microsoft, and one rule we had was don't change the UI a whole lot because it
Yeah.
pisses off enterprises, right? Because they have to go through retraining and deal with
Right.
some low level worker who doesn't know how to use their computer all of a sudden, and
Well, I think
you know.
it seems like, Microsoft still has a huge installed base, and obviously,
Yeah.
new UI hopefully keeps people on Windows, right? And I think if you look internationally, right, they've
Yeah.
even more market share. So
No, that's absolutely true.
it's probably going to help them keep that, entrenched market share. I did think of something else, by the way, just a non sequitur, but to we didn't touch on ad tech very much, and Sean kind of was talking about the Xbox and Roku, and so earlier on he mentioned some of the investments that we're making, like Sky Channel, that would let you, for instance, publish your own channel, let's say on Roku, if you had content. We really think TV is poised to change, and we haven't made a whole lot of noise about this. I mean, Roku would be probably our best known investment, but we do have some earlier stage companies that are helping content owners get direct over the top to people's living room screen. And if when you look at, for instance, advertising, the biggest chunk of advertising dollars is still going to TV.
Yep.
It hasn't budged. So we obviously see print, We see radio that have all gone digital, and the lion's share of that actually has gone to Google. But television is still sitting out there domestically at between 70 and 80 billion dollars a year, and so we just think that the television watching experience is going to change with all these on-demand options, and of course now the satellite company, the cable company that controlled distribution, well, they don't own the distribution network. The distribution network is the internet, and so for people who have these media assets, they can go. There's still a role for a huge distribution network, and television advertising isn't going away anytime soon. But for those people that have branded content, or for people themselves, whether that's a Robert Scoble or a Glenn Beck, or it could be a syndicated TV show, they can go to their audience. They can actually sell advertising now through automated online means, and that's, I think, going to create a huge shift in both sort of where advertising dollars go and really kind of change viewing habits. So that's something that I think a lot of venture groups aren't really talking about and focused on, but we think it's probably the next big major change in media.
Very cool. Well, thanks.
Well, one more,
All right.
because we were talking about beforehand, but this the context. I know it's something you care a lot about with the upcoming book, and it's one of these things where for so long now we've had to work hard to accomplish our goals, I think, using computing, and you're just starting to see the very basic underpinnings of this happen. But the idea that when you're watching TV, exactly what you're looking for gets brought to you. When you're walking around, it's not, pull out the phone, hunt and peck.
Tony Fadell calls it human augmentation, or human. That everything in life is going to get assisted, or that there's going to be a little assistance, sort of like a Siri kind of thing.
Right, Siri. I mean, it used to quote John Battelle. The search, the future of search is like talking to a good friend, right? Yeah. I mean, it'll be, but even more thoughtful. Like, it's not just even asking questions. It's whatever happens to be relevant in your life, in the news. If a machine can do a good enough job of really giving you dynamic, curated content based on any sort of number of inputs, I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity.
Tony Fadell is the founder of Nest. He's making new kinds of thermostats. There's a thermostat behind you. That's not a Nest one, but
that's watching the room and the temperature and what are your habits and when are you home and why should you have to spend 10 minutes programming or any of these things? Why, if you're hungry and there's a deal at your favorite restaurant, why doesn't the car just start driving you there and ask for confirmation? I mean, things like that would just be so much easier.
Very cool. Well, thanks for spending a bunch of time with me. So that's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Where did we learn about you guys? Where's the best place for an entrepreneur?
Oh, it's Menlo Ventures, of course. Absolutely.
MenloVentures.com.
MenloVC.com.
MenloVC.com. Yep. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right.